All right, on to the next presentation, and now it's going to be slightly less academical, because my presentation is going to very practically focus on the initiatives in Denmark supporting entrepreneurship. So that's what I'll be focusing on. So it's going to be a little bit of practical. I'll just go through those initiatives. I won't cover it all because I wouldn't even know them all. There are so many, but I'll cover the more kind of broader ones and more important ones in my perspective. So, yeah, mapping of initiatives, as you can see in Denmark, is going to be the subject for this presentation. Just very brief, myself, I'm actually working in Odense. I have run a consulting department with 8 consultants that work with local businesses, including entrepreneurs. We work with almost 400 businesses every year, help them getting started, help them digitalize, help them export, many different subject areas. So we work actually with a lot of these entrepreneurs on a daily basis. In addition to that, I have a background from the US. I was in San Francisco for many years, and I founded and started my own company in San Francisco, Cradle Rock Safety. I ran that for 8 years, smaller business, couple of employees, all safety in private homes in the San Francisco Bay Area. Sold it and came back to Denmark, and then I joined that consulting hub, business hub Fynen, where I still am, and then I still have a business. This is a new business in the US. I started back in 2016, and a couple of, I guess, challenging first years. That's how it is when you start a business. You pour a lot of money into it, and you work, and you burn your midnight oil, definitely. We still do. I have an English partner, so I'm not the only one. Spencer's in England and I'm in Denmark, and together we work the US, so it's very international. The last couple of years have been really good for us. We are now in many different sales channels in the US. One example is Target. Some of you may be familiar with Target, one of the really big retail chains in the US. Obviously Amazon we're on, Bed Bath Beyond, Chewy, many of those chains, and it's kind of rolling right now. What we sell is, we actually sell products that has been manufactured by a Danish company, and it's as simple as baby gates, and pet gates, dog gates, safety gates. So that's what we do. So that's a bit of a sidekick for me. So in addition to working with a lot of entrepreneurs and startups, I also exercise this little thing on my own. So those were the words. Let's look at the initiatives in Denmark in these broader categories, as I said. We do have, I've listed those kind of main ones. We have a lot of government initiatives, government-European Union initiatives, where we have programs that are made available to entrepreneurs. We have a lot of activities in the universities of Denmark. We have national clusters that they also cater to entrepreneurs, startups. We have various associations, whereas you've already heard from CORE is representing one of them, that work within the field of entrepreneurs politically or gather data, work within the education field. We have business hubs, and a business hub, that's the one I represent. There are 6 business hubs in Denmark. I'm with the local one here in Odense. We have the local municipalities, the kommuner as we call them in Denmark. They also have offerings for entrepreneurs. There's one very close to us here within 5 minutes drive. That's the local one for Nyborg, or Newcastle in English. And then we have the investor-backed startups. Yeah, Nyborg, I'm just going to do a little sidekick. Nyborg is actually part of, there are cities around the world that all bear the name of Newcastle, right? So Neuchâtel, I think, in Germany. So there is like an association of cities, and I guess they meet once in a while that have this name. It's in Newcastle. Nyborg is one of them. Anyway, let's move on. So the government initiatives, as I mentioned, predominantly European and national funded programs that are kind of propagated through various organizations. Business Hub is one of the organizations that are responsible for making some of this government financing, government program available to entrepreneurs. So the government typically provide basic support and encouragement to entrepreneurs. They, as one example, have just, I say, it's almost 3 years old now, launched this digital platform. It's called the Business Guide, Virksomhedsguide, and it's very much geared towards entrepreneurs. It's very kind of practical. So when you want to start a business, how do I get started? You can download the legal documents that you need from this guide and make it really easy. For my business, I've actually downloaded, although it's not a Danish business, but I still downloaded such as like the share owner collaboration documents and things like that. It's quite convenient and you can get it from there. So that's a typical government initiative. They provide that support. So that's the access to free resources online for entrepreneurs. There are various other government initiatives. One example is the Foundation of Innovation that's geared towards the innovative entrepreneurs, very typical in the tech field, but not only the tech field. There are financial aid to get, if you have an idea, a good idea, a scalable idea, you can get financial assistance to develop this idea and really make it grow. If you, again, have a really good idea and you want to kind of focus on it for a year, leave your job or come out of school, wherever you do, there is a program, it's called InnoFounder, that will basically pay you 1 year's salary, so to get you a monthly salary to focus on developing your business. But those ideas have to be quite innovative, and you find them predominantly within the tech field. Another program which is also government funded is Beyond Beta, which is really an accelerator program. So again, for entrepreneurs that want to start a business, they can go into this program and they get lots of support. There is a bit of funding, there is mentoring, and there's this a really strict structure where the aim is to accelerate, not just to get your business started, but really to accelerate it and make it grow faster. Your Startup Denmark, I just want to mention that as well. We have a program which I think it's specific to Denmark, although I'm not 100% sure, but that's inviting international entrepreneurs to the country. And probably around 150, 200 businesses every year. They come from all over the world, can apply, they provide a business plan, and then they can get a permit to stay in Denmark, and they get support to build their business here. So the purpose is really, from the government perspective, to facilitate more entrepreneurs and also make sure that when the entrepreneurs finally start up and get going with their businesses, that they have a higher survival rate. Universities, just run through almost, I would say, probably all universities in Denmark nowadays have a startup hub. It's a student environment for entrepreneurial students that kind of toy with their own business idea. There is a setting where they can get a desk, the facilities, they can talk with other students within the same area. There are corporates as well invited in, so there are businesses, which I think is quite important actually. You have local businesses. The Technical University of Denmark, which is DTU, their setting is called Skylab. And they're really a good prime example how it works very well, because they involve students with the business, professors, companies, private companies within that specific technical field come in, share ideas, and that's a really good environment for the entrepreneur to grow in. Yeah, so they provide the structure and the knowledge to students about how to start a business. It's only for the academic entrepreneurs, and it's going to be in the taught subject fields, obviously. So that's what characterizes the universities. And DTU Skylab, as I've mentioned, is a really good example of that. The purpose from the university perspective is obviously to provide support to entrepreneurial students and to help them build a business and grow a business. Then we have I guess, on a similar note, we have the national clusters that are technology or subject-specific clusters. They are a collaboration of predominantly companies that work within the same technology field, also universities, and there are other stakeholders in there. It's not just companies, but it's predominantly companies. There are 14 of those clusters in Denmark, and they all pretty much facilitate startups and entrepreneurs. So they have a part of their the work they do, a part of their purpose is actually to facilitate entrepreneurs, help them get started and help them grow. They provide the structure and the knowledge. Again, you get an office desk and very low practical at very, very low cost. Very importantly for the entrepreneur, through the cluster, the entrepreneur already from day one gets access to the right network. So get access to technology network, get access to potential customers. That's typically within the supply chain, because the clusters also have coverage of pretty much the whole supply chain, meaning it's just not the companies that work in a specific field. But it's also companies that actually deliver products and services into those companies that work in that specific field. So for an entrepreneur that's been granted access into a cluster, kind of immediately gets access to a really big base of companies, a really big base of potential customers. One good example is actually, as you can probably tell from the picture there, Odense Robotics. And Odense Robotics is one of the leading robotics clusters in the world. There's a lot of robotic activities going on here. Odense, I should mention, is the biggest town on this island, and it's just 20 minutes away from here. They've been very successful building the city up as a robotic city. Actually been so successful that when these clusters 3 years ago were formed nationally, they were predominantly regional or locally. Odense Robotics was the only one that was still entitled to use the name Odense in the cluster title, because they're all national. But that's just because the brand was already so strong and so well known internationally, so they kept it. So that's a really good example that we foster many new startups, many entrepreneurs within the robotics fields, and many of them actually come in to the Odense Robotics cluster, and they get that whole support of the ecosystem. So it's the funding, it's the knowledge, it's even the business mentorship, and it's also immediate access to a whole supply chain where they can get fast delivery of the products and services they develop within the field. So it's foster, grow, and accelerate technology entrepreneurs we're talking about here. Associations, Core was a good example, so I'm not going to go through. There's a couple of really big associations. There is a Danish Foundation for Entrepreneurship, which we just heard about previously here. Then there is also Danish entrepreneurs, it's called Dansk Iværksætterforening. They work more kind of politically on the conditions for entrepreneurs in Denmark, kind of look into what are the policies, things that are not very well thought that needs to be changed. They kind of advocate, they kind of lobby for that. That's some of the main things they do. Business hubs, that's, as I mentioned, one of those that I come from, where I work on a daily basis. The main thing for us to do is offer consulting and provide access to some of all that funding that's available, government funding, because typically entrepreneurs, they don't go directly to like the government, the State Board of Business, they go through a partner, and that partner could very well be us. So that's the main thing that we do. We offer access to the funding. We help right applications. We help kind of screen the business, the application, if it's valid, if it will actually go through. And then we offer consulting within specific areas. There are 6 hubs in Denmark, as I've mentioned, so we offer access to these funding programs. Beyond Beta, as I've mentioned before, InnoFounder are some really good examples that we are very much involved in entrepreneurs in those 2 programs. Purpose, that's to help grow and accelerate entrepreneurs. Locally, we have also a lot of activities going on. It's typically run by the municipality, the commune. It doesn't necessarily have to be run by the commune. The commune can also decide, which we have like 3 instances on Finland, just to fund an organization that runs it on behalf of the commune. But here in Nyborg, it's run by the commune, and it's an environment that's about 5 minutes away from here. It's not so far from the big bridge you see towards Copenhagen. It's out in that area, and that's probably one reason why they actually call it Broen in Danish. That means the bridge, because it's out there very close to the bridge. Again, this facility provides the structure and a more professional environment for local entrepreneurs, that is. You have access as a local entrepreneur to an office space, as you can see, a desk at very low cost. I believe it's on a monthly basis around 60 to 65 euros that you get your own desk, and it includes wireless access and heating and so forth. So that's really kind of a low cost offering to foster local entrepreneurs, to get them started. And keep them local, really, because that's really an important aspect, which I'm sure you recognize throughout Europe, that a lot of the entrepreneurs, especially younger people, they seek towards the bigger cities. So what do smaller cities do? I mean, this is what you do. They foster an environment, make it very desirable to start your business locally. They also provide basic classes, accounting, marketing, online sales, very typical type of classes they provide to entrepreneurs. You have the benefit of networking with local businesses, so a little similar to the cluster I was talking about before. You have access to businesses that are local, so if you have a product or an offering where you'd find your customers within the area, this hub will give you kind of an exposure and access to the local businesses. It's all kinds of entrepreneurs, which is important. So you see all kinds. I mean, it's like from someone wanting to start up as a hairdresser to someone working on a digital platform that's going to kind of conquer the world. So it's all kinds of entrepreneurs. The bridge is just an example. All major cities pretty much have these kind of entrepreneurial environments. Purpose, importantly, it is really to foster more local businesses and also to foster more local employment, create jobs. Then we have the private startups. Those are investor-backed startups, and we have quite a few of those, not in this town, but nearby in Odense, which is a bigger city. We have quite a few of those. We see quite a few of those early robotic companies, founders that have kind of made it good. They made a bit of money, and then they decide, because they're really passionate about their field, they decide to create these hubs environments where they invite robotic entrepreneurs in, as an example, and they may even invest in some of them. So they're owned and operated by investors. They, again, as with the other hubs, they provide the structure and the professional environment. They also provide the business mentoring. The venture capital is quite important here, which is also the difference from the previous one, from the local one. So when we look into these more privately owned hubs, they have also, importantly, the money to the entrepreneurs to put in to some of these ideas that they kind of like and they think of it. So they would provide the investment in some select cases. Networking, again, very important for an entrepreneur coming into this environment. Yeah, this is from one of those hubs. It's called Visti Unlimited. Thomas Visti is a guy, a fairly young guy actually, who was involved in some of the big early robotics startups, and he runs this place now in Odense with about 50 or so entrepreneurs in this environment, in his settings. So the purpose is provide environment and then cherry pick, which is important because when you're a private investor like this is a perfect flow of really exciting entrepreneurs, businesses, where you kind of get to see them and follow them and learn what they do. And as an investor, you can cherry pick the ones that you really believe in, and then you buy into them. So that's quite an important aspect with this type of entrepreneur. There are other initiatives as well. I'm not going to go through major details, but obviously we have awards, entrepreneur awards. Ernst & Young is just one good example, where we name an exciting entrepreneur of the year. That's what they do to bring focus on the whole idea of entrepreneurship and starting your own business. We have events, Week 47, Tech Barbecue, a couple of examples there. We have competitions as well, Danish Tech Startup Challenge. So there is actually quite a lot of other initiatives that also happen throughout the country, and even locally that I haven't even mentioned. And the purpose would be to inspire and honor entrepreneurs. Business angels is another thing that I didn't mention. Mentor networks also, where you have some more experienced, could be people like me with a bit of gray hair and that have business experience that take entrepreneurs and give them a bit of advice or provide them with a network that's valuable to them and their startup. Just 5 minutes on this one here, because I think that's quite important actually, and I have to apologize. This slide here is in Danish. I was a part of this work for about 4 or 5 years ago, where the Danish, official Danish Board of Business had aimed to kind of try to characterize entrepreneurs and businesses in general into so-called kind of archetypes, and here comes maybe a little bit of anthropology in play. It could be interesting, but what they found was that you can characterize businesses with this model up here, and you see there is some overlap. The bottom one is not too terribly exciting. That's more ongoing business. It's not an entrepreneur, but it's already going. What is exciting for us in this context, though, is the pre-starter and the serial entrepreneur, and the goal-oriented and the product-focused. Those 4 categories are interesting, I think, also from an educational perspective. The pre-starter, and I guess we all know them, typically people with ideas, and you all know they have, I should start this business, we should start this business, and it never really happens. Few of them will actually start and become entrepreneurs, but a lot will not really make the step. And you can argue why is that? But there is a big category of those pre-starters that are just kind of browsing and having the ideas, but nothing is really happening. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the serial entrepreneur. And those are typically people that they just love to start up a business and get out of it again. Successful, non-successful. Successful, they may spin it off, sell it, and cash in a little bit of money and go on to the next one. Now we start the next business, now we start the next one, and so on, because their desire is just to kind of start businesses, and when it gets a little boring because now it's all running and it's not really the startup, the entrepreneurial mode we're in anymore. Now it's becoming a proper organization, we spin it off. I'm not interested anymore. Those are the serial entrepreneurs, typically. In between, we have the product-focused entrepreneur and the more goal-oriented. And that's something I recognize quite a lot with the businesses I work with. For instance, when you look at all those robotics companies, or even companies that work in some kind of a social field, sustainability, that they have this dream, they have this thing they want to work with. If they cannot form a business in that field, they're not going to be entrepreneurs at all. They're just going to go find a job because they're passionate. That's what they want to do. So that's one group of entrepreneurs. And you have the other group of entrepreneurs, and I'm probably a part of that myself, where it's the whole idea of starting a business and running it that's the fun part, that's desirable. It doesn't matter whether it's sustainable, social, baby gates, robots, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Just the whole idea of building something and running a business. So I think that's quite important also when you look into the adult education, that it's very kind of a personal thing. What is your desire? Is it to build and run a business just for the purpose of doing it? Or is it important that it's within a field that you really burn for? Findings, what works? And those are going to be the final comments from here. Motivation, obviously, for an entrepreneur, always. You got to have that personal motivation. Whether it's product focus or goal focus, you're going to want to have a desire to build a business. Driven, confident, energy, self-assured, risk-taker, and all that stuff. Those are all personal values that they have to be there in order to make a successful business. In addition to that, what we see is also important, as it always helps there's more than one founder. Always. So if you look at some of the companies that do become successful, even the ones that grow and become big, more than one founder. Very typical, especially nowadays, and especially in the tech field. Supplemental skill sets. So you may have a tech founder, but then there's somebody else who's not a tech savvy person, but who's more business oriented or something else. It's got a good network or whatever. Supplemental skill sets, always an advantage. More than one founder. And then the ecosystem. We find that it's not so much your background as an entrepreneur, it's not so much your academic background that's a determinant for whether you start a business and whether the business is still running 3 years after you started it. It's more the ecosystem. So where you start out, the support network, that's what matters. Access to funding, of course. Access to other businesses, business mentors. Those are the important things. Involvement, as I mentioned a few times, with existing and going corporations. Mentoring. So all those things are more important, more relevant than the entrepreneur's actual background, academic background. I think that was it. Thank you very much.